All right. Well, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on when you're seeing this episode on Lilydale Radio. My name is Stacy Schuerman, and I am the host of Who Are These Spiritualists that play once a month on the fourth Sunday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's always exciting to share in spiritualism, being a spiritualist, being a medium. I am one of many hosts of Lilydale Radio, and we always love having you on as listeners, or if you're watching this from the Lilydale YouTube station, we are welcoming you to tonight. I'm super excited because I have two guests tonight, so it's like you guys are getting an wonderful two for the price of one. Uh, I like to always think of it that way of who are these spiritualists. I have Anthony Mikolojeski and Dr. Susan Barnes. Welcome. Good evening or afternoon. Again, like it's a pre-recorded show. So, but we're definitely excited to talk not only about each of them in their independent mediumship abilities and skills, but also what they're doing in Lilydale that mid part of June. So you have to stay tuned. You have to listen to the whole thing to get all the details. So let's first start by welcoming you both to the show. Who are these spiritualists?
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's great. Great to see you. So I'll start with Susan, if it's okay. My first question is really simple. How did you become a spiritualist?
I don't know if that's a simple question. I moved to Rochester, New York, which is the home of spiritualism, and found spiritualism, found Lilydale, and started going to a spiritualist church. And from there, it just evolved.
I love it. And what about you, Anthony?
Well, I think working as a medium, for me personally, provided the evidence of the, existing afterlife and the science behind it. And I joined the Church of the Living Spirit in Lilydale. And when I first took steps in the door, I was actually studying with Mavis Patilla at one of her courses, and I just loved the church and I loved the feeling. And I attended a few services, and then I joined.
That's wonderful. It's always I always love when people find spiritualism through either like its birth center, like Rochester, or like Lilydale, one of the longest running spiritualist communities really in the US. And so it's always fun. And I've never met anyone who isn't a spiritualist who has stepped on the grounds of Lilydale and said, yeah, I didn't feel like home. Like didn't feel they always get that pull there, right? As a spiritualist. Now you both talked about, or Susan, when you were talking about finding spiritualism, was it the science, philosophy, the mediumship? What kind of drew you into it that was like, wow, I'm interested in this?
I think it was the mediumship. I know at first I'd sit there and I'd watch the mediums in church going, what's the trick? What are they doing? What are they doing? And I was very lucky that I was a member of the Church of Divine Inspiration in Rochester, and they brought in the British mediums to come and teach classes with us. So I learned very quickly about links and evidence. And I said, that's what kind of a medium I want to be. So I went to England and I did earn my CSNU from the SNU.
Okay, wonderful. That is amazing. And that's also really cool because for those of you who might just be stumbling upon spiritualism, I mean, it wasn't really invented by any one person or one time period. This idea of communication between this world and the spiritual world has been around since mankind. And they talk about the Advent kind of starting, maybe a little bit more wider known or talked about more publicly, due to the Fox sisters or the movement of that time. And it did also make its way to England, and they have an outstanding, spiritualist program. I know when I started this show, the first person I ever had on my show was Jackie Wright, who's now, I believe, the president of...
He's the president of the SNU, yes.
Yeah. Oh, I love that small world. And same question for you, Anthony. What kind of drew you? I mean, you talked about like the mediumship aspect, but did you have an experience that sent you to that?
Yeah, I too studied at Arthur Findlay College, and studied with Mavis and Tony Stockwell and Simone Key and a few others. And it kind of the spiritual path, how I felt coming from my heart space, it just resonated with me, and it created more interest, and I started doing more research, and then decided to join a church.
Awesome. It's that
Mhm.
snowball effect, right? Once
Yeah,
you
it
get
was
a
an
taste of it,
unfoldment.
yeah.
It
Once
was an unfoldment.
I love it. Once you get a taste for it, right? It just
Mhm.
is like it becomes so wonderful. And Susan, you had talked about just in that last question about the proof of continuity, that demonstration of mediumship. So what type of mediumship, or what is your favorite, uh demonstration of mediumship? Like, how do you consider yourself, like, what type of mediumship? This will be for you too, Anthony, so get ready for this question. What type of medium are you, if that's the right word to ask, or what's your favorite form of mediumship?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer because, of course, I do the mental mediumship. I also do trance mediumship, and I also do some physical mediumship. So, and I do spirit art. So, yeah, is there a favorite one? Well, I don't know, that they're all kind of work together, and it's whatever happens, whatever day of the week it is, if that makes sense.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah, I
Totally.
mean, and whatever people are around me. I mean, it's what people need. For instance, we had people here for the eclipse the other week, and so we were sitting around my house, and we did physical mediumship because that's what happened. Um, other times I'll be with somebody, and they definitely need more of a evidential type of mediumship, so I'll do mental mediumship with them. So it all depends. I like to work with the art though, because the art does give me some inspirations into things in your subconscious mind that you might not think about normally.
I love that. And that's, I think, so, when they say that, like, everyone is like some form of a medium, that idea of inspiration, that inspiration that we can receive, that then is expressed through us, as art to me. So I think, like, all artists, regardless if they call themselves an artistic medium or not, are definitely using that inspiration, which is so powerful, isn't it? Just, it's so.
Yes, yeah. I love teaching people that think they can't do art, and then we get these wonderful messages from their images.
Oh, that's amazing. Amazing. And so what about for you, Anthony?
Well, I definitely am a mental mediumship. I do mental mediumship, and I love doing platform mediumship in front of audiences. I really enjoy doing that with evidential mediumship. Through some of the platform mediumship events that I've had some physical mediumship through light, where the spirit world has created these intense flashes of light. Usually several times during the event. The lights are all on in the auditorium, and so that was kind of an unfoldment to realize that spirit was communicating through me
Mhm.
with this light. And I have actually a couple of pictures of it that my husband was able to capture at one of my events, and it's really quite spectacular and really beautiful to see. It kind of has like a spectrum rainbow effect. Um, and it kind of looks like a comet at the same time because it has a tail on it, and you can actually see all the spirits lined up ready to connect through me. So it's really it's just I don't know, it's been an interesting process for me in the last couple of years, realizing that. And of course I have been able to demonstrate some physical mediumship in the cabinet with Susan, And she's been grateful enough to have us over at her place. So we had some airport evidence that came through after I was in the cabinet, and the lights were on, and we had things falling from the ceiling. So it was really quite exciting time, right, Susan?
Yes, yes. And the
And
airports are still coming.
yes, they are. She just had a recent experience too. But I do spirit photography. I capture spirit in photography. I also do spirit art as well. And I do watercolors specifically. Let's see. What else do I do in mediumship? Well, and I love to teach. So I think
Sharing.
sharing.
Yeah. Now, for some of you listeners, you might be very familiar with spiritualism, and you're hearing words like physical mediumship, mental mediumship, evidence, trance, apports. Some of you might be completely new. And if you're completely new, don't worry. Like I always say, mediumship is a gargantuan umbrella. And there's all these little spokes that are holding up the cloth of mediumship. And all these little spokes can be these different forms or different ways mediumship is produced, through the medium and the connection and their connection to the spirit world. So I always say, and I love, you guys touched on so many of them, healing, trance, evidential mediumship, that proof of continuity, inspirational mediumship, guides, angels, teachers on the other side, physical mediumship. 5, if you think about it that way, there's going to be physical, tangible connection versus like where mental mediumship is going through, the filter of the mind of the medium. Physical happens with the 5 physical senses. That's like the KISS method. Keep it simple, spiritualist, and the definition between physical and mental. But you can really dive deep into so many different, modalities of mediumship. So with that being said, I have to ask, like, how long, I guess, have you been, because you both have talked about, doing numerous classes, Susan with your degrees, and, how long, like if somebody's wanting to kind of get in, like what should they expect for their practice timeline? Because, it's probably not instantaneous. That's my guess. I think it probably takes some time and work. So what are your feelings of that?
Well, I have to say, and this gets to the conference that we want to do, and I have to mention last year's conference because we have a very definite perspective, and our perspective is that we want people to try things. And so, when we did the physical mediumship conference, we didn't do any dark seances in Lilydale for reasons. And we did a lot of experiments, and I tried to bring back some of the experiments that some of the classical physical mediums who had lived here did. And I really feel that I try to provide opportunities for people to explore different types of mediumship so that they can find what works for them.
I love that. Explore and find what works for you, because I do think, and I see Anthony shaking his head, so we'll get to him, but I do think that if you're trying to emulate or do something that you've seen, maybe by somebody else, are you really honoring your own connection with spirit by trying to be like someone else, where you should maybe embrace how spirit is working with you?
Exactly. Yeah. We want to provide opportunities for people to experience those things.
That is awesome. That is, and we really are kind of leading into, this coming up. You guys, who wants to tell about some of the basics, and then we'll start the discussion into the detail.
Okay.
Who would like to give the basics? When is it? I know it's in Lilydale, but all those kinds of
cheat sheet here, so I can read it off. Yes,
we do need a cheat sheet because it's a lot. But
it is a lot. I read it online. I'm like, wow.
Well, first of all, I want to say that to everyone that Susan was the creator of this, and she did such an amazing job last year, Susan. It was really great. Everybody had such a great time coming together. We had so much fun with it, and people are still talking about it now just because We kept students engaged all, well, we didn't. Susan did. I was a student. But we were engaged from the time we got up to the time we went to bed. And it was just great. And we made so many great connections. And it was very special. So I encourage everyone to come back that were here last year, and we hope to see a whole bunch of new faces too, because it's a place to experience and grow and just see and I guess sample a possibility of maybe an ability or gift that you're not aware of. And this gives you the opportunity to try with no pressure. Right, Susan?
Absolutely no pressure.
I love it. So, Susan, use your cheat sheet. Give us some details here. I love it.
Our event is called the Metaphysical Medley, and this was inspired by my friend Patricia Best, and it's June 16th through the 20th. The first night is a kind of introduction. We're going to do some table tipping and things the first evening, and then it's 4 days of classes. The first day is intuitive work. So we're going to have a chance to work with intuitive, different types of things. The second day is mediumship. So people can focus a little more on evidential mediumship and developing their mediumship skills. The third day is trance. So if you have never tried trance, we're going to experiment with that. And the final day is experimenting with physical mediumship. And every night there's an event on it, either a demonstration of mediumship, or the last night we have Julie Adriani and Michael Shane going to do a demonstration of physical mediumship.
Wow. That is some packed days of some real goodness, I have to say. So let's start with that first day, just because, again, if you're listening, if you've been inquiring, wondering about things, this sounds like an amazing event to kind of like put your fingertips in all the little bowls of water, if you would, of anything to do with mediumship, because that just sounds so amazing. So the first day you talk about the intuitiveness. Do either of you, or what is your opinion, the difference between intuitive and mediumship? Is there one? What is your opinion?
Do you want to go first, Susan?
Yeah, intuitive. I mean, we have intuitive feelings about things, and we have intuitive instincts where we just kind of know things and feel things. Technically, real mediumship is about bringing through evidence of connecting with a spirit deceased person and bringing through their information back to the earth plane so that the individual you're reading for can recognize that their loved one is still around in the spirit world. That's technically what mediumship is about, where intuition is more about, oh, I have a feeling so-and-so's on the telephone, or I have a feeling this is the right way to go or the wrong way to go.
Okay. I like that. And Anthony, how do you feel? Same, a little different, or?
Well, I do. I feel pretty much the same as Susan, because if you're intuitive, you're going to get a feeling. You're going to get an impression or an energetic feeling from someone or a situation. And like Susan said, mediumship is connecting, with loved ones who have lived here before. And, having the evidence to prove the connection.
I love it. Listening to you both, I got this feeling of like our intuition, our intuitive self almost kind of reminds me of connecting to my higher self or my soul, like the knowing part of me, and that mediumship is connecting to the knowing souls of others on the spiritual side of life. So both information seems pretty relevant no matter how you get it. It just is different, though, like on where maybe the information's coming from. Very interesting.
Yeah.
I like that. I really do. I really enjoy that. And so you have your first day is intuitive work, your second day is mediumistic work. Now let's talk about trance, because I think there's so many maybe misconceptions about what trance is. Would you also think, and I also wonder, like, to me, I'm under an awareness. Now, I do not consider myself a trance medium, actually thinking I should maybe take this class. to understand more. But I've always been maybe under the understanding there's different levels of trance, or I don't
Yes.
know. So who wants to start and tell me about either your personal trance mediumship or what you understand of trance?
Susan, you're the trance expert.
I'm going to say this to you. There are different degrees of entrancement. I mean, for example, if you're a mental medium, chances are when you do your readings, you're in a slight state of trance. You're in a slight altered state to get those messages through. So you're just hearing what the spirit world has to tell you, and you're sending that to your recipient. Um, and you're slightly in an altered state because you're letting the right side of your brain come through. There's then states where we go into deeper states of trance, where there is the level where the higher mind comes through, like inspired speaking, is when we go into a little more of a trance state and we let our higher mind work with the spirit world to bring through the messages in our talk. Then we can go deeper. And if we go deeper, then we get a blending that goes on. And if you get the true blending going on between the individual and the spirit world, you can allow that spirit entity or essence to be able to use the medium to speak through. And that's a blended state, and that takes a little deeper state of trance.
Amazing.
And can I add to that?
Absolutely.
You know, like when I have studied with Tony Stockwell, and he says, when you're in the deep trance state of blending with spirit, is the true essence of mediumship, because it's the deepest level. And I think the more that we practice going into the deeper trance of state of communication, you're going to become a better medium, because you're going to be able to, feel that zone, and you're also going to feel more comfortable with having spirit blend with you. So it's just a matter of practice. It's just like a muscle, like anything else. But then there's also this comfort of trust within yourself too. Don't you agree, Susan?
Yes.
So it just, it takes time to evolve, I guess. It's just like anything. The more that you work at it, the more that you become. I just heard a tree crack outside. Yeah. Sorry about that. But yeah, so the more that you work with anything, the better you become. The more you become confident. And I think you have to have that confidence not only in yourself, but in the spirit world, to get a greater and better communication.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to say too, like, so, your own personal, like our own, I'm just talking from my own personal experience. My own personal experience with mediumship has changed in the years. Like, you might go in expecting one thing and come out, completely opposite of what you expected. Or,
That's so true.
maybe you've always just known. Like, I know some people are like, they've always just known that this is their wheelhouse, if you would. And I think that the more that you can educate yourself about the umbrella and all of the different, little wire spokes holding up, that blanket of mediumship, the more, one, you don't have to do everything, right? You don't have to be or do everything. One thing is enough, I do want to ask, I'm sorry, my squirrel brain, because Susan, when you were describing trance can be like for healing, for proving that continuity, or developing into physical. There's a lot of things that trance can be used for, correct? Is that my understanding?
Well, although trance is a form of mental mediumship, it is very similar to physical, because the physical medium is in a very deep state of trance when they're doing their work. Trance is tricky because there are different levels, and sometimes people may be tapping into their higher consciousness and not really in a full trance state, but we would consider spiritualist a trance state. And this is where I think a lot of people who channel are. They're kind of in an in-between state between they're getting some kind of influence from some kind of spirit connection, but it's also coming very much through their higher mind. I mean, and you see that because the channelers will have one person and one personality that they bring through. Where in trance, you don't necessarily know who the personality is that you're going to bring through, and it changes, and the messages are more personalized, are more for the people in the group. So that's where the evidential stuff comes through, is because sometimes in a trance state, you can bring through deceased relatives and messages from those people as well. You can also focus it on trying to do healing. Doing trance healing is a different way of using your mind and using the trance energy. So, I mean, you can train yourself in all of these different modalities.
That's amazing. And thank you. You must be really in tune, because one of the questions I had rolling in my head that I was going to ask as soon as you were finished was, what's the difference between channeling and trance? Because you hear that a lot right now. You're hearing a lot of people say, well, I channel, I channel, I channel. And I always thought, what is that difference between channeling and trance?
Well, you have to realize that channeling is a new age term.
Yeah.
Trance is a spiritualist term. So when we look at trance, and I look at it strict because I had my SNU training, trance is allowing those spirit personalities to blend with the person and come through. Where channeling, people, they say they channel all kinds of stuff. They'll get some kind of an entity, and channeling can be anyone from Atlantis to an alien from outer space. And when we're doing the trance work, we're dealing with more discarnate people and discarnate spirit guides, and dealing with kind of earthly types of consciousness. I'm going to say consciousness because it's all on different levels, but we're dealing with consciousness that has a relationship to the earth plane. We're not dealing with Zor from planet Ectograph or wherever, who's coming through and giving us messages. And the messages that a lot of them bring through are pretty much the same. They're uplifting, but they're similar. And all of the trance messages have to be positive. See, I can tell when people are not really in trance when the messages go off, when the messages go off into different directions, or are not staying on that higher level. Then I know the person's mind is coming into it, and it's not pure trance.
Mm-hmm.
I have to thank you for saying that, because I think sometimes people get really caught up in, well, maybe you guys are always way too positive, or you're always, but the thing is when we're working with spirit, we want a higher vibration, one that's going to bring inspiration, healing, hope, love. We already know what our issues are. You know what I mean? We live that every day, right? What we're searching for is that comfort that spirit brings. And I can only imagine when you're working in that high of a vibration, the only thing that can come of that is comfort. And I love that you said, if it moves maybe a little more towards the lower vibrational, because I don't even like to use the word negative. I look at everything as vibration, that it is probably our mind influencing, and so I really appreciate that, Susan. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that's what makes trance teaching so difficult, is that we have people that, you give them the opportunity to speak in a quote trance state, and they're using their own minds, and it's hard to say to them, hey, you're not really in trance. It's really your mind. But sometimes you have to.
Yeah, and it's important too. I mean, in any of the classes, it's great to take online classes, but I think when you were a beginner, wanting to, try mediumship or try, evidential mediumship or trance, I think that you have to be in a classroom, a physical classroom, where, someone who's teaching the class can give you constructive criticism to tell you when you're going through, getting the evidence from spirit, or your mind is getting in the way. And it's just a matter of training and kind of assisting or coaching that student to be able to work, to know the difference, So for any of you listeners, it'd be good for you to take some, in-person classes. That's a must when you first decide to go into doing psychic or mediumistic work.
I have to agree with you, Anthony. I'm kind of I like to, I don't want to call myself like a fence sitter, but I tend to always look at the good and the bad, right, of everything. And COVID was great in the way we learned that we could at least connect with others. Like we didn't have to be isolated. But then now at the same time, I think like what you're saying, it is important. I mean, it's not impossible to not be able to do mediumship online, but it's also not impossible to just learn it in a classroom setting too. And I like that. I'm a feely person. And there's nothing like being in a room full of, bodies and souls and disincarnated souls. Though I sit here in my house and I feel very connected to both of you as we're going through this interview, it would even be, for me, a little more intenser to be in person and be able to really feel the full energy of each other versus just a partial, if that's how I see it anyways.
Yeah. And I also feel too, like when you're in a classroom, a live classroom, you get a chance to meet different people from different walks of life that are interested in the same thing that you're interested in. And they share their spiritual experiences, either through, psychic or mediumistic experiences, and you share with them yours, and you learn from other people's connections in the classroom, and you build relationships, and then you end up having this family of people from around the country and around the globe that you can connect with, and I just think that you just learn from each other through those classroom experiences.
And I would just like to add one thing, is that one of the things we definitely want with our conference is to build community. And so I have to say, from the last conference, I mean, I'm still in touch with a lot of the people through text, through email, through all of this. And I also have my global community that I'm a part of with the Victor and Wendy Zamet group, which is just pretty much through Zoom. But you can do it both ways, and you can bring both of them together too. And that's what I like to do, is bring it all together.
I love that. I agree with you. That's my mission. That's like we were laughing before we started. That's our coffee house mission, is just to have this space where it can bring people together. And that's, that goes back a little bit to some of the history of spiritualism, is why, we talk about on Who Are These Spiritualists, is we have to remember, like, spiritualism is alive. And I'm going to be positive and say well today, because we have to be a community. You can agree to disagree and still be part of a community. And that's what I look like when I look back at the history of spiritualism, and that movement, and all of the hundreds, if not thousands of people, mediums, healers, philosophers, ministers that came together to keep that movement alive. They weren't all, they treated each other like brothers and sisters, but were very opinionated in their own, path and truth. So that's going to bring in a fun little question that I always like to ask my guests. Is there a pioneer, a medium, someone that you kind of look up to or might feel like a kindred spirit with in their, in their pioneering, that now because I believe we're all pioneers. When we say we're spiritualists, when we say we're mediums, and we demonstrate, we teach, we share, that is us paving the way for those next generations behind us. So who wants to start with maybe who their favorite spiritualist of yesteryear, could be even yesterday, is?
I can do that. My favorite is Cora Richmond. And her work, I haven't been able to delve deep into her work on the soul, her ideas of the soul with spiritualism, because I do believe that she had some ideas that were a little bit different than mainstream spiritualism. because I know she called her church the Church of the Soul. And she was amazing medium because she was able to trance lectures through the spirit world. And she had a team of different people that she would call on depending on the theme of the lecture. And she would call on them and they would give a flawless lecture for an hour. And just amazing stories about her. And again, her education was not one of such where she would know about biology, philosophy, and all these topics. Yet, when in the trance state, she spoke about all of them.
Amazing. Yes, I love her. Cora, I know she had a few last names, Richmond, Scott, Hatch, but either way.
That's her maiden name. Hatch was the name of the first husband she had. And there's a couple of husbands in between that I'm forgetting. But yeah, the last one was Cora Scott. Richmond was her last husband. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. And what about you, Anthony? Does anyone stand out in your mind?
Oh, absolutely. Well, Andrew Jackson Davis. I connect with him for one particular reason. I had Lisa Mandel, who also is going to be one of our presenters, and she's one of our colleagues in this seminar that we're putting on. And she mentioned to me, 6 years ago or 5 years ago, 6 years ago, she wanted me to go to Lilydale. And I said, I have too many things going on with the house expenses this year. I think we're going to have to put it off. And that evening I went to bed and I had this voice come to me, and long story short, he presented himself and I asked who it was. And his name, he said, "My name is Andrew Jackson." And I thought, okay, I didn't, and I kept thinking the president, he says, no, sir, I'm Andrew Jackson Davis, the spiritualist. And it was as loud as it could possibly be. And, I have another person sleeping next to me and didn't hear a thing. And earlier, 2 weeks prior to this experience, I came home one day and I had direct voice tell me I needed to paint, and I watercolor. And I went ahead and started watercoloring, and this face emerged, and I didn't really know who it was for a couple of weeks, and it sat in my bedroom, and that's when the voice came to me and said that I rearranged for your friend to call you to go to Lilydale, and he says you have to call her back and make this contact to go, and you will have more than enough money. You'll have money left over, to go on a trip. You'll feel very comfortable. Don't worry about the finances. And then he said, one of your classes that you'll be taking is spirit art class. I'll be watching you from all four corners of where you're at, excuse me. And I didn't understand that completely. And then he said, you're taking a course with Mavis. And he says, don't be surprised when she asks you to demonstrate mediumship the next day on stage. And it'll be a surprise, like you don't know it's coming on. And I said, oh my gosh, thank you. Everything unfolded the way it was supposed to. I had more than enough finances to go. I was taking the spirit art class in the Andrew Jackson Davis Lyceum building. And his pictures were all around me, staring from all four corners. It was freaking me out. And then I studied with Mavis, and I told Lisa about it. And Mavis surprised us with platform mediumship the next day. And she says, and Anthony's going to demonstrate how it's supposed to be done. And everyone just looked at me and we kind of laughed. And but I was prepared. And I have something to show you.
Oh, I love this.
And this was the picture.
Well, yeah.
Wow.
That's the watercolor of Andrew Jackson Davis.
That's amazing. I love it. I love it. I just love what spirit can do. The possibilities are just absolutely and truly endless. That is amazing. And both of you who brought up Andrew Jackson, I actually have Under All Circumstances tattooed on my arm because that profound, information he received, because he was such a connector to spirit. He received all of his information, it just seemed like, through the spirit world. And Cora, same thing. They both have great books to read. They both are published authors in their own right, and there's just some amazing material out there. If you're wanting to read, some people have a hard time reading Andrew Jackson Davis.
Yes.
But you also have to remember in the time period in which both of them were writing. So, I mean, English has come, or our literature has come a long way since then, but it is truly, truly a very excellent way to learn. Now, I know I can't believe I feel like we could talk for hours still, but our show is slowly coming to an end. So for those of you who have been listening into Who Are These Spiritualists, with me, your host, Stacy Schuerman, and my two guests today, Anthony and Susan, give us some more details a little bit about this event in June. If you want to come, I know like some logistics. I can tell you that I know Lilydale has guest houses, and I even think the hotel's open then, right? Is that what I've heard?
Yes.
So there's rooms to stay in. You do have to call Lilydale Assembly or the guest houses to book your room. So, buying your ticket to this class does not guarantee you room. So you have to do that. But tell us a little bit, one more time, the dates, how to sign up, how to get their tickets.
Susan, take it away.
June 16th through the 20th. You can get all of the information at www.lilydaleassembly.org. It's all there. You can also call them to book. The hotel is open. It is a pre-season conference, so there is no gate fee for that week. What's really nice is the Dale isn't that busy. It's mostly us, so we have a real community of people that are here in the Dale and enjoying things like the coffee shop and places. So it's a great time to come, meet people, and experiment with your mediumship, experiment with some different things you might not have thought about trying before. So that's the purpose of this, is to try everything. And I know that Lisa is doing divination tools, so she's going to be bringing all kinds of different tools for people to try. Plus, we have a past life exploration that Patricia's going to do. I'm going to do aura work. I have my aura camera, so we're going to do work looking at people's auras. And then in the evening that night, we've got tea and flower readings. So I'm happy to say that even with our nighttime events, when we demonstrated these things, we had a bunch of people from last year's conference go and try it and start to get involved. I know Anthony's one that got involved with flower readings.
Oh, love it.
Love it. Again, I love it. And here's the thing. You just can't get enough learning. Even if you take a class and it doesn't resonate, you learned that it doesn't resonate for you. And you might end up trying something that you never thought in a million years you were going to do. And you find out how much it resonates with you, right? So it just sounds like you are offering a plethora of different ways. And I love, Susan, that you keep saying experiment, because that's really how we develop, is by experimenting. And the more we experiment, the different ways we experiment, we really get to kind of hone our gifts and our understanding by really being that diverse. So I am super excited. So I know now I'm trying to think, like, how do I take off of work? But like Susan said, you can find all the information on lilydaleassembly.org.
Maybe we can sneak you into a class.
Okay.
Yeah. All of a sudden, Michelle will go, "Where's Stacy?" And then we'll just leave Michelle. They know what to do. They're very good at the coffee house. Just missing for, a couple hours. It won't be. Just dematerialize me and let me show up right in the middle of class. I love it. Well, thank you.
I just want to say too, about just learning and exploring, and even if you're an experienced medium, and to your viewers that are just starting or interested in wanting to take some of these classes for the first time, even us experienced mediums, we are constantly learning and growing, and it's never ending. I mean, you're constantly learning and growing from spirit, and you're learning more about yourself as well, of how you work, and mastering different aspects of yourself. I think it's one of these things that I never never thought I would get bored with at all, because everything seems to be ever changing, right, Susan?
Yes, and there's one more thing I want to note is that if somebody's interested in one or two topics of the week and they don't want to do another one, you can buy it by the day. So you can buy just the day of trance or just the day of intuition, if you want
That
to
is
go through.
amazing. Oh my gosh. Now you're going to have all these people signing up. Go do it. Do it now. Sign up. If you're waiting for your sign, here's your sign, right? This is your sign.
Right.
That's fantastic. That is
And
fantastic.
if you stay a few days longer, you're there for the opening week of Lilydale too,
Right.
and we'll have plenty of events going on then. And Michael Shane and Julie will be doing some extra seances on Saturday and Sunday outside the Dale. So there's lots of interesting things coming about for that whole week.
Yeah.
So stay a few extra days and experience opening week of Lilydale, because
The
it's
monks
just
will be
really,
here.
yeah.
The
Yeah,
butterfly
the monks will be
release.
here. So
There's
yeah,
just so much. I love it.
it's a very exciting time. Yeah, and because you'll have the whole group from our conference, and then moving into the monks being here and having opportunities to see other seances and things as well. So yeah, it's a good time to come to the Dale.
Absolutely. And I already put the request in that Mother Nature that it'll be beautiful and wonderful and fantastic. So, well, I just want to thank you, Susan and Anthony, for taking this time out to be with me this evening and sharing, your journey into spiritualism. It takes a community to keep the spiritualist movement alive, and I'm really glad that I got to know more about you too, and how your journey in this and moving it forward is helping so many. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having us, and thank you, Susan, for putting on this conference again this week, because she did a fabulous job last year, and it's going to be another fabulous conference this year.
So exciting. So thank you everyone for listening in. And if you're catching this when it actually streams for that first time, you can always go back and share it, replay it, share it with friends, definitely who you think might be interested in coming to this conference, or even anyone who wants to know more about spiritualism. Lilydale Radio hosts, like I said, numerous shows. There's Wednesdays with Willa, Waking Up to Spirit with Celeste, Nancy Lombardo's Enlightening the Way, Tiffany Hopkins Making Mediumship Normal, Colleen Vandersite, if I'm saying her name. Kathleen Bolt has Meet the Medium's Porch. And there's always just a lot of information on the Lilydale Assembly Facebook page or the Lilydale Assembly YouTube channel. So this will be, I like to say, put in the ethers for everyone to experience it from years to come. And I thank you all again for tuning in to Who Are These Spiritualists with Stacy Schuerman. Every fourth Sunday of the month, we get to meet new people, new spiritualists, paving the way of spiritualism forward into the future. So I can't wait to see you next month, and you can be surprised on who our guests are. And I'm more happy to meet you all when you come to this conference in June. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you.